Hello, fellow G's. This is Edgar coming at you from NAGn Studio East. Welcome to News Across the Galaxy midweek preview of the Nashville SC versus LA Galaxy matchup taking place this weekend. To help us discuss what went down against Miami last night in a wild match in the CONCACAF Champions Cup and help us preview the match this weekend, News Across the Galaxy is honored to have Tim Sullivan, host of the Club and Country podcast covering all things Nashville SC. Welcome, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. Tim, what a wild encounter with Messi and
Mhm.
Pals. How are you holding up?
Oh man, it brings me no pleasure to report that I'm like way too old to be staying up till only 10:30 to watch to watch a game. But yeah, it was quite the wild match. Even when Nashville went up 2-0 on two just absolutely like bomber goals from Jacob Schaffelberg. It always felt like the other shoe was going to drop. And actually, after Lionel Messi scored, I was like, okay, it actually doesn't feel like Miami's really threatening again. That maybe a 2-1 win is going to be the result here. And of course, when Miami brings in the talent that they do, they pay to bring in the talent that they do. You end up with guys like Luis Suarez who are in the right position to make the play that he did right at the end of the match and steal the result for Miami.
I still feel that third goal should have counted for Nashville, by the way. I thought that when I saw that happen, I thought to myself, this is it. This is the final nail in the coffin. But then Don Garber, gets on the hotline and makes the call and things
Yeah.
happen. And, we
Yeah.
saw that happen in real time last night.
Yeah, on our podcast, which you were the guest on, but I did not record the non-guest portion until after the match. I was like, man, like we Wes and I go really far out of our way usually to avoid criticizing refereeing, but man, that just felt like it had CONCACAF fingerprints all over it. They were like, we need Messi to advance in this competition, and it really did feel like that, unfortunately.
Oh yeah. It's almost blatant to a point. I mean, the joke here in our region has always been the officiating, whether it's at the regional or national level. You never know what you're gonna get, right? You get
Mhm.
a weird mixed bag of officiating, whether it's your club competitions and or international games. And right now we're having our own issues here in Major League Soccer with the pro strike,
Mhm.
which I guess MLS wants to call it a lockout or something. It's really weird the kind of language that they're using. It's like it shifts every day, and it also seems like the attention that this is getting has also shifted because it seems that the referees are in the right, and
Yeah.
Major League Soccer is just not budging. They're trying really hard to sell us on some of the replacement reps, but if every week that passes, you get more upset voices, and after a while, it's gonna become a real nuisance. Um, but going back to Miami, we keep hearing about how Inter Miami was supposed to be in shambles after this disastrous preseason. But I remember telling some of our listeners that in situations like those, you either crumble or you come together stronger. No pressure, no diamonds, right? For now, at
Yeah.
least, it seems like Inter Miami has transitioned well into MLS and CONCACAF Champions play, but underneath it all lurks the uncertainty of shady, questionable officiating that undercuts the drama of what we are presented. LA Galaxy got a good dose of that on opening day when what should have been a solid victory over an overwhelmed Miami squad was tainted by several severe referee blunders, including a red card to Galaxy midfielder Mark Delgado, which altered the course of the match, giving Inter Miami the edge they needed to claw 2 points back from a more deserving Galaxy. Our guys were able to go into San Jose, and I mean, they said it themselves. They wanted to kill San Jose. Those poor Smurfs. They were sacrificed. At the altar of Gargamel. And but now enough about Miami. Enough about the Smurfs. Nashville has had enough ugly pink kits to deal with this week. The focus now shifts to as LA Galaxy travels to Nash Vegas for a compelling matchup. Galaxy enters the match in a three-way tie for first with Portland Timbers and St. Louis City SC based on points, while Nashville find themselves mired somewhere in the middle of a very crowded Eastern Conference with two draws after two MLS matches. Tim, what can you tell us about Nashville with only two matches under their belts
Mhm.
so far in this season?
Yeah, it's really interesting because they have been really limited so far in MLS play in their opening CONCACAF Champions League, and I insist on calling it league still. Sorry, everyone who has a problem a problem with that, which would mostly be CONCACAF officials, I think. But both Sam Surridge, who was their big DP striker signing last summer, and Hani Mukhtar got hurt in the Dominican Republic. Both of those guys have been limited. Hani Mukhtar returned last night for that match against Miami. Looked like he hadn't missed a step. He I think went like about 81 minutes, so he got basically a full run out. Looks fine. Still no word on Surridge. His issue is a shoulder issue. He kind of got undercut going up for a header and landed on his elbow, and you can really mess up your shoulders depending on how you land, and that's what happened to him. They have said, fortunately, he's not going to be out as long as they initially feared, but it would be kind of a surprise if he were available on Sunday afternoon. But the big picture is when you add Hani Mukhtar, it's the same as Miami's preseason, since we're obsessed with talking about Miami today. If you have really bad results because you don't have Lionel Messi, it doesn't mean a thing about what you're going to be like when you do have Messi. Hani Mukhtar is not Messi. It brings me no pleasure to report, but he is that important to what Nashville does. So when Hani Mukhtar is back and fully healthy, you get a very different team. And I think we saw that on Thursday night. And I think that that's going to be something that really changes their fortunes going forward. I guess in comparison to those first couple games.
One of the questions that we had over here was what kind of roster Nashville's going to put out in the middle of the week against Miami, um, and whether the focus was going to be solely on having a good performance in the CONCACAF Champions Cup versus, what are you going to put out in the over the weekend against LA Galaxy and this early in MLS play. As we have seen in the past, time and again, it doesn't matter whether you get 3 points at the start of the season or at the end, all these points matter. So the question is, what should Galaxy fans expect from Nashville this weekend as far as lineup is concerned?
I'm actually pretty interested to see myself because I was not surprised to see basically a full strength lineup against Miami, but the depth into the game that some of those guys went, and a big reason for that is because it was a 2-1 match late into the match. They wanted to keep the best lineup out there as long as possible. And of course, they take Walker Zimmerman off and a headed goal happens to them. So those guys probably weren't able to get as much rest as hoped. Walker Zimmerman has been in and out over the first few matches here as well. So, Nashville has been really banged up, but it seems like they are focusing on playing as many of their top players as they can for the games that really matter going forward here. I think based on the fact that they only got a draw at home against Miami, it would make a lot of sense to go out and like play and have fun and yes, try to win, but not kind of wear your guys out going for the victory in Miami at the midweek. So I think that gives them the opportunity to play a bit more of the first choice lineup against the Galaxy. I can't recall for sure, but I don't believe Nashville has beaten the Galaxy in their previous matchup. So that's something that I think really Gary Smith hates having a losing record. He hates having a winless record against individual teams. He will go out of his way to change that when he has the opportunity. And I think he will look at that and say, okay, I remember Dejan Joveljic jumping into the stands after scoring against us. I believe that might have been in stoppage time 2 years ago. That's the sort of thing that sticks with him. He's a very, I don't want to say petty, but he has a memory for some of the stuff that has gone wrong in his Nashville tenure. And I think for that reason, as strong of a lineup as he can put out, does that mean Walker Zimmerman, after coming out of the match on Thursday night, is 90-minute fit? It probably doesn't. If he's not 90-minute fit, does he play? That's, I think, where the question mark is.
Yeah, we kind of put the, oh, I did. I'm sorry. I kind of put the cart before the horse, because we are going to discuss, the match afterward. But it was just one of those burning questions, right? After
Mhm.
what I mean was pretty intense match. You guys have had some pretty intense encounters with Inter Miami, or in just the past, it seems like
Mhm.
6 to 8 months. Uh, but one of the questions that one of our co-hosts had, going back to the Miami match, I hate to bring it back up, but was the whole issue with the supporter section. I know here in LA, there was like a concerted effort to try to keep out as many pink kids from the supporters areas as possible. And I mean, those pink kits are everywhere. Well, I mean, it's the black kits as well, but mostly the pink ones are the ones that you see on TV. What was going on over there? Because I did hear some rumblings, but can you explain it to
Mhm.
us?
Yeah, so the issue is Nashville opted to have a completely different ticketing process for the Champions League games versus the regular season games. And the supporter section, which is in the north end of the stadium, was not exclusively sold to supporters. It was open to anybody, presumably most people who lived in Nashville, but are still huge Messi fans and went. There's a pretty good South American contingent down Nolensville Road, which is very, very close to where Geodis Park is. It's the This is a complete tangent, but the park is located in a very good area to connect with the South American and Central American and Mexican communities in Nashville, along with some of the other, soccer loving immigrants from, Eastern Europe, places like that. But anyway, I think a lot of those people who are Argentine and big Messi fans, and maybe they're even Nashville SC season ticket holders, but they were not prohibited from wearing Inter Miami kits in that supporter section on Thursday night. And I think that's where some of the controversy came in. Nashville SC's front office has kind of a fraught relationship with supporters at times. So it doesn't surprise that they did something that disappointed the supporters again. And of course, that Galaxy fans know as well as anybody that happens at basically every club in MLS. So it's something that I think the front office will hopefully learn from, but I think experience tells us that they might not. But um, you know, at the game, and it was loud for Nashville. It was also loud for Messi. It's going to be loud for Messi everywhere you go, but it felt like a home crowd. So as diminished as the actual supporter culture aspect of the supporter section might have been, it was still a pretty good crowd.
So since we're on the topic of the supporters, uh, I know that a lot of the fans across MLS are getting used to a lot of different types of uh, traditions and ideas from some of the newer clubs in the league, and it seems that Nashville has is trying to create some new traditions, right? The club
Mhm.
itself. But one of the things that fascinates me the most is what happens among the supporters, because that's where you have that real organic feel to creating something that becomes a real tradition that lasts
Mhm.
a very long time. So, um, getting into that, can you explain to us what the club does? Because I know that they have different musicians, right, that
Mhm.
perform before matches. And how would you describe Nashville SC supporter culture? And
Mhm.
a third part of this, and I'll bring it up if you want me to again, but how did that evolve from what existed during the Nashville FC days?
Yeah, so I'll actually take the last part first because I think it's an important part of telling the story of the club, which is this was a club that was originally founded by supporters, the primary supporters group, the largest supporters group. It's called the Roadies. They were originally owners in an NPSL club. Eventually, they sold their shares. It became a USL club, and eventually the supporter ownership ban from MLS meant that the Roadies share had to be sold completely. It's now owned by John Ingram, who's a businessman who's a guy who inherited wealth, and all these all these owners are those sorts of people. But the Roadies especially feel like they are the club, and for better or worse at times that can be something that is obviously a strong positive a lot of the time, but sometimes there's a certain gatekeeping that Nashville SC experiences that again most clubs do experience in some way, shape, or form, but it can be a little bit more toxic here, I think, than for some other clubs. But the club has tried to interface with the supporters really well. And like I mentioned before, there have been some ups and downs with that. People who are in the supporter section, who are in what is called the backline, which is the umbrella organization that is all of these supporters groups. Um, uh, People who are in the backline but are not in one of the specific supporters groups or are not seated with one of the specific supporters groups kind of have the word, I would say. It just seems like there's kind of a taking people for granted, and Nashville always talks about how it's an event city and people want to come visit Nashville, and you throw a party, people will come, and people in the stands who have been there since the Nashville FC days kind of say, well, there should also be something where you kind of show loyalty to the people who made soccer happen here. Again, for better or worse, there's an element of that is misplaced entitlement. I think I could say might not make a ton of my listeners happy, but it is true. But in terms of the game day traditions, the club was very um, precise, very conscious of making sure that they had that party atmosphere that they wanted to have when they started the club. You alluded to the Gibson guitar riff, so it's not only a cool Nashville themed thing, it is also a sales item for the club. Shout out to Gibson Guitars for that one, but they have local musicians. They sometimes have supporters who a ton of people in Nashville are just musicians with local bands that are not going to turn into the next big country star or whatever. So they've had a competition where you could compete to play the Gibson guitar riff before the match. They try to end that right at kickoff, which is pretty cool. If you're in the stadium, you hear the guitar basically get cut off sometimes if people go too long with it. So that's kind of funny. But and then the one thing that they did is the alt folk rock band Judah and the Lion compose an anthem. The club's CEO, Ian Ayre, is a big Liverpool guy. He's the former chairman of Liverpool. He was like, "We need to have an exact clone of "You'll Never Walk Alone,"
Oh
but
my
it
goodness.
needs to be a new original song." And it is a little corny, but it's kind of become part of the fabric of what fans expect at the end of a match. It feels a little less corny. It just kind of feels like it's something that happens. But yeah, all those sorts of things that kind of happen with the club trying to make the atmosphere kind of mold the atmosphere into the sort of thing that they're thinking melds with just fairly typical supporter culture, drums, flags, all those sorts of things. They actually, I believe they still have, I can't recall precisely. They still have since the roadies were a semi truck themed, like roadies, like for a band. They had smoke that came out of a rig that was shaped like the front of a semi truck. The club has um, built a facsimile of that. You are not allowed to pop smoke in Major League Soccer. It is one of the rules, but the club has like a smoke machine that kind of replicates that. So it's kind of a cool nod to the history of the founding of the club and stuff like that. But for the most part, it is a really fun atmosphere. They don't always sell out, but it's always really fun in Geodis Park. And it is the sort of situation that I think most MLS fans who have been to a game other than like at Chicago or whatever have come to expect.
You shouldn't feel too bad about the whole thing with the Liverpool, never walk alone,
Mhm.
because I know for a fact, and this is from me having visited Vancouver,
All right.
that before the match begins, they play "White is the color of the club," which is
Mhm.
a play off of Chelsea FC's "Blue is the color."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that was something that some Vancouver fans from the 70s started. They were expats and they were Chelsea fans, and they were like, how can we show love for, our new club here in Canada? Well, let's take, our favorite song from back, in Britain and just give it
Yeah.
a little spin over here. But that's the thing, I feel like supporter culture, like literature. I'm a writer myself.
Mhm.
It's kind of like a great conversation, right? And people
Yeah.
add their own bit to the conversation, and this conversation is like a living document that's always changing and evolving. And if you compare what we have nowadays in the stands in MLS to what was there at the very first year in '96, it's like a huge contrast.
Mhm.
There were some of the barras where they're like, I know DC had their barra
Yeah, I was gonna say,
brava.
did the Bravo Bravo was a big one, but
Yeah,
not a lot of other ones had that sort of thing.
yeah, exactly. And here in LA, we had the Galaxians, and it was like but it's a big difference to what exists now. The
Yeah.
way it's organized, the way it's ordered, and the kind of traditions that have been built from those days. Um, But as far as some of the other traditions, I was curious. What is a typical game day like? What is the pre-match tailgate like? What's it like as you're heading towards the stadium? Is there a particular spot where the fans hang out and have
Mhm.
barbecues or something now?
Yeah.
Because I love Southern food, man, and you guys give me some Southern barbecue, and I'm there.
Yeah, it's so it's been altered at times because for a while the club said this area. So they built the stadium in the state fairgrounds, which was not a very big fairgrounds. If people think of a state fairgrounds and they think of like hundreds of acres of space, it was not really like that. But there's still a bunch of parking around. There's still a bunch of like exhibition sheds for like I don't know livestock or whatever happens at the actual state fair. I've never actually been, but there was an area that was designated by the club for all of the groups that are members of the backline to have a designated space to kind of come together, and it was in a cool courtyard. That went away very quickly after 1 year, and now there's lot 5 is it's a, like big soccer field, basically like youth soccer fields. It's down a hill from Geodis Park, which is on top of a big hill, and I think it's cool. People who have trouble with stairs are not huge fans of it, but it is cool. And yeah, so the supporters groups and fans generally will kind of hang out in this big sort of field that is it's like what you would expect, like a grassy parking lot, basically, that people go and go hang out in and do all the sorts of things that you'd expect. I'm legally obligated to say that a lot of people take the 14-minute and 20-second walk to ML Rose, which is a bar on 8th South that supports our podcast. So I always have to say that people who make that 14-minute and 20-second walk are not only good Nashville SC fans, they are good fans of the Club and Country podcast, and we appreciate them. But it is there is a bar district on 8th South, which is I guess it's 4 big blocks away from the stadium, and it's a place that not a ton of people actually make the walk, but those who do, we appreciate.
Okay. One of the things about Nashville that's always been fascinating is the music ties. As the city
Mhm.
is known for not just its vibrant lifestyle that has grown over the past 100 years, but also its contributions to music. And I
Mhm.
know last year Nashville put out, which in my opinion was the best kit in MLS last year, which is the Man in Black Johnny Cash inspired kit. And you guys put out a new kit this year called the 615. I ranked it. I can't remember the rank I got it, but I know it was one of my top ranked
Yeah.
kits. And I really liked the fact that they were reaching out to the different communities in the
Mhm.
area and having like little tags that you could put on your kit to, call back to your area.
Mhm.
And then the players on the opening day, right? They showed up and each one of them had a little tag from their particular, area where they live. Um, that's a fantastic idea. What kind of feedback have you gotten from people regarding the new kit?
Yeah, the kit itself it's kind of plain. I think there's not a problem with plain as long as it looks good, and it does. It's just gold. It's actually like yellow, but I really, man, we parse the difference between gold and yellow enough, and I really don't care with the blue bar across the front. But like you mentioned, that 615 connection, which I think people who are recent to Nashville who have to suffer the 629 area code instead because 615 got filled up. Those people might be a little disappointed. But yeah, those patches that represent all the neighborhoods are awesome. My neighborhood, the Nations, has one. Every neighborhood that is of a big enough import, I guess. There's one East Nashville one, and there's like 15 neighborhoods in East Nashville, so they didn't do it perfectly, but it's really cool to say, okay, I live in Sylvan Park. I will buy the Sylvan Park patch and put it on my Nashville SC kit, and my Nashville SC kit officially says that this is the neighborhood that it represents. I think that is a really cool touch. They have done a good job making sure fans from different areas of town. And like I mentioned, heading down Nolensville Pike. I don't think I think they just say South Nashville. I don't remember what all the badges were. I apologize to Nashville SC if you're listening and mad at me for not remembering the specifics. But they have the patches that represent areas that might not be obvious to people who are moving to Nashville from California and Michigan and wherever else. People who have been there for a really long time and live in neighborhoods that people who are new transplants would never move to are also represented. And I think that's really cool. And that's something that Nashville has struggled with at times, but they're doing a really good job of kind of correcting their past wrongs when they first started as a club too.
Yeah, I just looked it up while you were talking, and I did rank it number 18 out of 29, which is like
Oof, that's tough.
it's middle of the pack. But this year, MLS put out a lot of fantastic new kits. It seems that after years of getting like all those boring white, just blah
Mhm.
uniforms, everybody's really upping up their kit game. Um, one of the things that I mentioned was like, that blue stripe across the front. I thought maybe they could have had like an embossed city skyline or something with
Yeah.
that referenced the music culture in Nashville. But hey, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. Um, so let's talk a little bit about Nashville. I
Mhm.
know that Hani Mukhtar just penned a new deal.
Yeah.
What is the significance of this to Nashville SC? Because for a while there, a lot of people were wondering if he was going to stick around, right?
Mhm. Yeah, last year, he has since admitted that last year he was trying to hammer out a contract with Nashville. He was thinking about potentially making a move overseas. He really wasn't in the right space mentally to perform at his best over the second half of the season. I think you could watch the matches and say that was kind of the case. It came off as injury at the time. We assumed he was just banged up enough that he wasn't as sharp as he has historically been. But he said the part of the reason for that was just because I was distracted by this contract issue. So having it in the rearview mirror is so positive for Nashville. It's something that is going to allow him to play his best. And having a player who's been an MVP and an MVP runner-up within the past 3 years is pretty good to lock him down through the 2027 season. So that's also something that I think Nashville SC fans were pretty excited to see. It's you don't get better by losing your best players unless you replace them with even better players, I guess you could say. But it is a situation that it really to say, okay, we know we are going to have him through 2026. It is our option to have him through 2027. That's something that is going to provide some stability to this team. I think it helps with recruiting. I think it played a role in being able to land Sam Surge in the transfer market last summer, knowing that he was going to have somebody like that to play with to feed him those passes. So I think it can only help, and it can only help Hani individually have his focus right, and it can only help the team play better because they can focus on the other stuff themselves as well.
Yeah, another player that's also coming back is a Walker Zimmerman, correct? And what
Yeah.
is the importance of having him back there with the club?
Yeah, so he was actually injured for like a good part of the second half of last season. There were a lot of things that went wrong for Nashville SC in the second half of the season. I think they were third in the Supporters Shield standings before the League's Cup. Obviously, they fell in the League's Cup final to Miami, and then they were just not good the rest of the year, to be quite frank about it. So some of that was because Walker Zimmerman was injured, and that's not just what it impact it has on Nashville's defense, although it does. It doesn't make them give up a lot more goals, but it makes them protect the center backs a lot more because they don't have as many guys they can trust. And it also hurts the offense more directly in that he's a really big set piece threat. He scored the very first goal in the club's MLS history against Atlanta United on a set piece. He headed it down and booted it past Brad Guzan way back before COVID. Believe it or not, people, those times existed. But so he's one of those guys that in addition to being the emotional leader of this club, and he was named the captain last season. Took the armband from Dax McCarty, who was very gracious in giving it up. A little less gracious in his departure this offseason, perhaps, but that is very much his
Yeah.
right. Walker is the sort of guy that backs up the attitude with his play, and I think not having a fully healthy version of him basically since the World Cup is something that hurt Nashville last year, and it hurt them in the first two games to not have a fully healthy Walker Zimmerman available for them, and they looked a lot better with him last night against Miami. So we'll see how he's able to maintain his health. He's not a spring chicken anymore. He's starting to get up there in years a little bit. He's not 30 yet, I don't think, but he is one of those guys that you need him to stay healthy because of how important he is to this club.
So somebody that was very important to LA Galaxy, which who is now a new addition with Nashville SC. His departure was we have to say there was some controversy to it. A lot of fans were shocked because out of all the things that went wrong for the LA Galaxy last year, it seemed like Tyler Boyd was one of the
Mhm.
ones that they absolutely nailed. He was the right fit, in the right spot. He really embraced the club culture. He talked about growing up in the area and how, he was very happy to represent the club, that he grew up watching. And after all that, right, after everything that happened, and after other
After
fans that,
his lovely
bought the
emotional
kits,
positive stuff. Yeah.
yeah, and the fans bought the kits, they bought the posters, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, they're discussing, whether or not he's gonna stay, and then boop, he's gone. But it's like,
Yeah.
what the hell just happened? I mean, right away, I went on one of the Nashville Twitter feeds, and I was like, you guys got a really good guy, man. Good luck,
Mhm.
take care of him. what's it like having Tyler Boyd added to the club, and what does he bring to? I know you mentioned this in your podcast, but can you
Yeah.
tell Galaxy fans in general what does he bring that is so different from what you guys have had before?
Yeah, he's somebody that is the closest thing that Nashville has had to Hani Mukhtar in style, not necessarily in quality. I think there's a reason that Hani Mukhtar has been a league MVP and Tyler Boyd looks really good, but doesn't necessarily seem like he's bound for that sort of honor. But he is not just a speedy winger like Nashville has had. They have had kind of an obsession with, okay, let's just get some guys who are really fast on the flanks and will play on the counter all the time. And that's been very successful for them. I don't begrudge them making smart decisions in that regard, but Boyd has the speed, but he's also a very technical player. And I think that's something that Nashville has not had a ton of. They have had some okay technicians. They have had Hani Mukhtar, and then you haven't had some very good soccer players, really. A guy like Alex Muyl is a very good athlete, a very good try hard guy, not a technician by any stretch of the imagination. If you add Tyler Boyd, who has that technical ability, it frees up Mukhtar to not have the defense solely focusing on him on every single attacking possession. Last night he actually played striker rather than on the wing, which was kind of an interesting choice for Nashville. In the absence of Sam Surridge, they need to do something. They are justifiably not super high on Teal Bunbury in his third year with the club. He's another guy who's an okay player, but you really feel like you can upgrade on that sort of player, especially because he's like 34 years old now too. So Boyd is I believe 26. He's the sort of guy who has the technical ability, he has the athletic ability. It's honestly wild to me that he ended up back in MLS last season. I thought that he was going to be able to move from Turkey to like a really big like championship club perhaps, or maybe even a Serie A type of club, and for him to come to MLS and play for Galaxy last year, where he, I actually last year was probably the first year in a while that I didn't watch every single MLS game. But when you popped on a Galaxy game, he was one of the guys that you always noticed. It wasn't, maybe some of the guys with bigger names. It wasn't some of the guys that, obviously, you and I talked about on our podcast. Chicharito was hurt basically the whole year, but you would expect him to be the guy that is going to carry the torch. It was mostly Tyler Boyd last year, and I think Nashville having that sort of weapon is something that they have not had in addition to Mukhtar in the past. They have always had Mukhtar, of course, and he's always been good, but it's been the Hani Mukhtar show or nothing. And now they have kind of that curveball that they can throw to the fastball of let's get Hani Mukhtar in transition, running at the center backs with the ball at his feet. Now you have a guy that he can combine with. You have a guy that he can feed. And I think that's something that's really going to help them diversify the ways that they attack.
How long do you think it'll take before Nashville can really start to see some results with having Boyd there, not just as a forward, but in his position as a winger? When you think it's going to take him, just a few weeks, or is it going to be take him a little longer to adjust?
Yeah, I think he's getting there. I don't think he was credited with an assist, but he effectively had an assist on the first goal against Miami. He probably had he not gotten the ball to Jacob Schaffelberg, they probably would have called a foul. He got taken out, but managed to do a very slick one touch layoff to Schaffelberg that led to Schaffelberg's ability to run onto the ball, slam it into the back of the net in a way that I don't think people knew Schaffelberg was capable of before last night. But I think Boyd is there, and we talk so much on our podcast about how sample sizes are so small. I think Boyd has been successful in the handful of games, the I guess 5 games, this 5 competitive games so far this season. I think he's been effective. I don't think that any sort of lack of official stats or anything like that is a sign that he hasn't been effective. I think it's just a matter of when it happens at the right time that it comes together, and he that little bit of magic or that little bit of luck that is always so important in scoring goals. I think he's got that coming because he's doing the little things. He's doing the underlying things that are going to result in that.
Speaking of at the right time, at the right place at the right time, I last night Jacob Schaffelberg. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness! I mean, those two were bangers. And one of the one of our guys in News Across the Galaxy was wondering, uh, what kind of with this performance in the Champions Cup, are we gonna see more of this in MLS play? Should Galaxy fans be looking at him and think to themselves, "Oh my goodness, this guy's gonna burn us," or is this something new?
So he's been a pure speed guy, basically. He was one of many pieces that Toronto FC has cast off. So they thought they were not good enough to play for Toronto FC, which has obviously been consistently one of the worst clubs in MLS over the past few years. Nashville has taken a bunch of those guys. Lucas McNaughton, the center back, is another one, taken those guys and turned them into really, really effective pieces. Schaffelberg is all about speed, like I just said, but if he can shoot like he shot with both feet last night, his goals were left, which is his dominant foot, and he hit the second one with his right. If he can shoot like that, I think the speed that we have already seen out of him consistently, the ability to get behind, whether to score for himself, to lay off the teammates, has always been there. It's just a matter of that final product, and it potentially seems like, yeah, that I would be keeping an eye on him if I were an opposing fan, because now that you know that he can put the ball in the back of the net, the other stuff feels a lot more dangerous.
Um, well, from the LA Galaxy perspective, as we head into the match this weekend, one of the things to pay attention to is that Gabriel Beck is not going to be available. I know he's not hurt. If you guys haven't noticed, Gabriel Beck is getting married, so congratulations to him and his lovely bride. But our new Brasileiro, he's not going to be there this weekend. So the question becomes like, is who's going to get the command for him? Maybe Gaston Brugman sees a bigger role with the club. We also wonder if maybe Gaston Brugman, who was such an important part of this club last year and the prior in 22, it might get a start after having come, through so much injury strife. But you also wonder, is Vanny going to roll out the same lineup for the third week in a row? Why break, if it's why break it if it's not, I mean, why fix it if it's not broken? Why mess with it? Um, it's a really interesting question because so far we've only seen good things from this lineup. Obviously, the biggest addition to the Galaxy lineup has been Joseph Paintsil, and I bring him up because I'm just curious to know what concerns does Nashville have with this new look Galaxy team? And Tim, do you think Nashville has an answer for Paintsil?
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously a winger who can really break people down on the edge is effective. That plays at any level, basically. Nashville has historically had a really good defense. The fullbacks have been good enough to slow down guys like that. And I think we saw it against Miami. They have some really talented players that effectively just serve as complements to Lionel Messi. The job is to break somebody down and wait until Messi breaks to the perfect spot and get him the ball. That happened a few times, and it didn't result in goals for the Herons last night. So it really does depend on what that final product is. You are going to get these fullbacks every so often. The question is what you do with it. Nashville's center backs are very good. Even without Zimmerman, if he doesn't play. You see McNaughton, you see Jack Mayer, who was the club's very first super draft pick back in 2020. There are some I think legitimate criticisms that Nashville's overly focused on the defensive personnel to the detriment of signing really good attacking personnel. We've seen that change with Surridge. May he get healthy as soon as possible, and with Tyler Boyd. But I think the defensive personnel is always going to be the focus of this club. So it really just does depend. I think the best way to beat Nashville is either to get lucky with a lofted ball, as we saw happen with Luis Suarez last night, or to have that winger break down the fullback to score for himself. Because if you beat that fullback, the center backs are kind of overly focused at times on that center forward, and that's to the detriment of their rotations over to that guy who has won a 1v1 battle. I think that's where you can kind of get this Nashville defense occasionally.
Okay. Predictions. Let's get into predictions. I know that on your show, you asked me for a
Mhm.
prediction, for this match, and I offered mine. I predicted that Nashville was going to win this match, but after seeing the tussle in last night's match, I mean, and the amount of energy that Nashville put out there, it makes me wonder, how much are they going to have left for the LA Galaxy? And so I'm going to ask you first because you were there. You got to experience, what it was like, in that atmosphere, and you got to see a lot of stuff that we didn't get to see on camera. What's your prediction, well, for the good matchup against Galaxy? You think Nashville can bring the same energy?
Yeah, I'm honestly no. I think they would like to. I like I said earlier, I think that because they did not get a victory against Miami, they are kind of willing to say we'll roll the dice and see what happens next week in that midweek game. If we don't advance past the round of 16, It probably is better for our MLS prospects. We have always seen teams that make deep runs in CCL have pretty terrible MLS seasons, whether that's Philly undershooting their expectations or Seattle missing the playoffs entirely a couple years back. I think Nashville wants to advance in CONCACAF Champions League, but I think that they want to put their focus on Major League Soccer first because they had a disappointing league season last year. The problem is, like you mentioned, they did put out a ton of energy against Miami. You can't go and take that back now. They did see Walker Zimmerman kind of limp off the field. I think it was just more of a fatigue limp than an injury limp, but he is a guy who's had an ankle injury over the past few weeks. So same with Hani Mukhtar, is a guy who was playing for the first time after injury. Played significantly, but you have to play regularly to be in the sort of fitness that it takes to only have 2 days off, 2 days rest, and play with that same level of energy again. I don't know that Nashville is going to have the same level of energy that they had against Miami. I think they will have more energy against the Galaxy than they will have against the return leg in Miami. But is that enough? It's so early in the season that it's truly tough to say, especially because Nashville has been dealing with these injury issues that it seemed like last night they mostly were coming out of.
Yeah, it is a compelling question because LA Galaxy, one of the things that we're still getting used to is how fast Joseph Pinto is on the wing and the kind of
Hmm.
dynamic offense that the team has begun to develop over these first few weeks. We're not used to seeing the team play this fast. We're used to seeing Galaxy, kind of lumbering around trying to figure out how they're going to score and then hoping that the defense can somehow carry them through games. And the defense has been one of their Achilles heels. So it's the recipe for a mess. But all of a sudden, you take some of that pressure off the mids and off the defense because there's so much attention being paid to these speedy forwards. So I'm just curious to see how this speed is going to disrupt the Nashville defense and whether or not Paintsville can be another impact player this week. Um, these are all questions. Obviously, we would love to rub the crystal ball and tell you, but we're gonna have to wait and see. But for
Hmm.
now, thank you so much, Tim, for joining us.
Yeah.
Before you go, I just want to ask you a few more things. What are some of the expectations that you have for your club, right? Not
Hmm.
just this season, but in general, with what they can do for Nashville and the state of Tennessee and MLS in general.
Yeah, I think going forward, they have kind of found their niche. They have, like I mentioned before, they have kind of realized and accepted that soccer is not exclusively brought to the United States by a bunch of English dudes who are coaching youth soccer games or whatever. And I think that embracing the multiculturalism of the sport is something, especially because of geographically where the park is located, is something that they have finally kind of figured out over as they've gone forward. I think that sort of stuff is really important to them. As for what it means for the city writ large, I don't know. It's an NFL city. It's an NHL city. They've had big sporting events here. Obviously, those sports are less multicultural for the most part, but I think you look at a Titans game, especially, you see Mexican fans, you see Argentine fans who are Tennessee Titans football fans. They know everything about NFL. Maybe the opportunity to follow a sport that they've been perhaps paying even more attention to over the course of their lives is something that kind of really helps the community. But I think going forward, Nashville SC is focused on kind of they have set a floor for the club in terms of its performance on the field. They believe they're going to be capable of making the playoffs every year. They're going to occasionally make a run. Now they want to start winning trophies. They want to become the sort of club that has 5 stars over the crest down the road. They want to be the sort of club that is not just, oh, they're pretty good, they're never bad. They want to be the sort of club that is known as being actively good, and I think that's going to be the next step for them. Whether that happens this year, we'll see. They didn't change a ton with the roster that was not super successful last year. And I've already mentioned a lot of that was down to luck, including injuries. But I do think going forward, they want to raise the ceiling a little bit. And that's something that it'll be interesting to see how they try to do that because it's not easy. We've seen clubs try to do that, through various means, including things like signing Chicharito, and that didn't work out for Galaxy. But it is a situation that Nashville, they don't make a ton of mistakes, but they also don't, other than Mukhtar, don't really swing for the fences and hit home runs with their signings either. So it'll be interesting to see if they can kind of change the latter without changing the former.
Sorry. I thought that one of the biggest things that the club did was actually build Geodis Park, which to me
Hmm.
is an amazing venue.
Yeah, it's
It's a
awesome.
massive stadium, and to say, if you think about it, what, 15, 20 years ago, you were gonna say we're gonna build a stadium of this size, this type of infrastructure in the middle of Tennessee,
Yeah.
and it's gonna be successful. I mean, people would be like, "What are you talking about?" Right? But it's shown that the sport can thrive in this part of the United States. The fans have embraced everything about this club, and the stadium is just this jewel that Don Garber can add to his Infinity Gauntlet, right? Um, but I know Galaxy fans that whenever Galaxy has played in Nashville, they love traveling out there. Be it Nash Vegas or just trying to absorb some of that beautiful Southern culture, right? But from your perspective, can you tell us where can visiting fans go to have a good time before and after matches? And is it cool to mingle with the Nashville fans?
Yeah, so it's definitely cool to mingle with the Nashville fans. You're gonna get bad apples everywhere, but for the most part, Nashville fans are really cool. I am not originally from the South, in case nobody has heard me talking for the last half an hour or whatever. But the concept of Southern hospitality is a little overstated in terms of its existence. But I think Nashville SC fans, especially, really do kind of embody that. They're willing to kind of embrace visiting fans, visiting supporters, and say, hey, come share a drink with us. Come share some of our tailgate food with us. If you want to go out and have like an absolute non-soccer related party, Broadway is what people think of when they think of Nash Vegas. It's like a mile walk up Fourth Ave. That's right there. It is everything you've heard about Nashville bachelorette parties. Hot tubs on being trailed by tractors going down the middle of the street. All that sort of stuff is there. It's not too far from the park. If you really want to go have like your just like crazy Nashville weekend, if you are, every person from the Midwest who seems to who seems to do that every single weekend and head to Nashville, that stuff is definitely there. But just north of the stadium, there's an area called Wedgwood, Houston. The stadium is technically in the neighborhood still, but there's kind of a growing area of a few bars, a few things to do over there. There's a really cool speakeasy. There's a couple just
Nice.
normal bars. There's stuff that there's a brewery that's there, Jackalope Brewing Company, not a sponsor, but there's a lot of stuff to do that's walking distance from the stadium as well. So there's a ton to do, and like I said, if you go there and you say, hey, random Nashville fan on the street, where should I go before the match? I don't think they're going to steer you wrong.
Okay, I don't think we answered the question. Predictions for the match, score?
I think you sold me on the 2-1 when we talked the other day. And it's not
Yeah.
necessarily because I think Nashville is going to go out there and like, put out their best offensive performance, but I think if Walker Zimmerman is injured, they're going to really buckle down and make sure that they don't get scored on. But when they do that at home, it really does open up the transition for Hani Mukhtar. And when you have Mukhtar and now Boyd together in transition, I think it really allows them to score on the counter. I don't think they're going to keep Galaxy. I don't think they're going to keep Joseph Pancil off the board, but I do think that they'll do enough to win at home, and that's something that they've done a really good job of, especially since moving to Geodis Park.
Well, I hate to do this, but
Switching it up.
I'm gonna switch it up a little. I still think Galaxy is gonna have a difficult time on the road because a lot of people forget that winning on the road in MLS is very difficult. The home field advantage is always a big deal. I still think Galaxy is gonna get a good result though. I mean, I think they're gonna get a good result as opposed to what I said. On your pod, I think it's gonna be like a 2-2 draw. Pretty feisty. Nashville is gonna be. I think Galaxy is gonna get frustrate Nashville a bit with Paintill's runs. But if Nashville can buckle down on him, they might be able to definitely get the win, like you said. The whole thing is just being able to contain him. He's like a new he's a new entity in
Mhm.
MLS, and people are still trying to figure him out. And just like in baseball, when you're a batter and you face a pitcher for the first time, he'll get you, and then the second time you could kind of figure him out. So let's see how it goes with him against Nashville in their first encounter. Um, and once again, thank you so much for joining us. Once again, can you tell fans, whether they're Galaxy fans, Nashville fans, where they can find you, and also your pod?
Yeah, the best place to find all of my stuff is no longer on Twitter. I used to be on there constantly. I now, as I told you the other day, I now have managed to swear off a lot of it. But if you head to clubcountryusa.com, or if you just search Club and Country on your podcast service of choice, we use Apple, I think, as our prime. Actually, I think we use Spotify as our primary one. I don't remember. Whatever. Go there. You can listen to the episodes. And if you go to clubcountryusa.com, they're all there as well. I haven't written as much as I used to, but I'm trying to get back into that in short order here. So, yeah, check it out. And I want to give a shout out to my co-host Wes, who has been unavailable with a family illness, but we're still thinking of Wes and excited to have him. Everything cleared up with his family and have him back in the studio as well.
Well, thank you very much. Hey, Galaxy fans, as you guys know me, I'm Edgar. You can find me on Twitter as Edgar Nags, also on Instagram. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in. We look forward to a very exciting match this weekend as Tyler Boyd takes on LA Galaxy and Paint Hill brings his new brand of football to Nashville. Who's going to win? We don't know. These things are
We're
being
just
written,
guessing.
yeah, I mean, there's like Don Garber is making this stuff up, behind the scenes as we're trying to figure out what's going on. But we look forward to seeing you guys on Sunday for our Sunday show where we wrap up the match. Once again, thank you very much. This is Ed from News Across the Galaxy. And as always, keep on nagging.